Good evening, all my lovers of great coffee the world over. I bring all of you back to our second week where, taking our selection from our beautiful giant coffee making sachet machine, we bring to you creamy caramel. It tastes about as... Yeah, I mean, I know I've already got... There's no secret, I've already got the mug here, but it smells absolutely divine already. It smells like it melts in your nostrils, you know what I mean? And we report to you live from the ancient Roman city that we all come to know as Stevenage. This place does not get any... I mean, think about it. We're in Stevenage. It's a Sunday evening. I've got exotic coffee, courtesy of Beanies. Literally, does it get any better than this? I've got my leather, I've got my AC/DC, I've got my Gucci, and we're ready for our first taste of the night. Smells lovely, I must admit. Oh my goodness. It's just it's the right taste of blend, it's smooth, it's like anything you would expect great caramel to taste like. Caramel, for those who have a very acquired taste, caramel should be smooth. It should linger. It shouldn't really stick so much to like the roof or your gums or your teeth. It should it should be smooth. It should flow like water, and it should be slightly easier to digest. It's like a very thick set of water. You know what I mean? It tastes about as good as it smells like, and that is the great taste of caramel flavored coffee, is that it should taste just like the real thing. And remember, these things are only 2 calories per sachet, so you got all the taste. It's sugar free. I'm not kidding as well. It even says on the sachet, sugar free, no nuts, vegan, and low calorie. And it's the sort of thing that, you know what, like the average working man should always be able to enjoy. Now, I've seen for a while now videos on YouTube about things like work culture, and that there are people out there, millionaires, who could have just given up work years ago, but they just like working. Because I very much fit into like one of those groups, because I have always liked the idea that once I first got into work, and it was not just work for its own sake, and this is the thing that people always seem to miss the point on, is that it's not just about, you know, your money problems coming to an end when you're in work. If anything, that's really when they begin. It's not work just for the sake of working, but it is work in which the average working man can enjoy the benefit. And one of the greatest joys in a man's life, ladies and gentlemen, is not just finding a job that he likes, not just finding a job that he enjoys, not just one where it wouldn't even matter necessarily if the money was great or not, but it's that possibly a man needs work even more than he needs money, because some people just turn up to work, they do what they do, they get paid, and then they fuck off. Real people who actually, you know what, it's people in the workplace when they are appreciated. You know what I mean? If you're in a workplace in which, you know, colleagues say, you know, are pleasant to you, they're friends with you, they tell you what's what and all the rest of it, and you get along with them, and you have like very basic interests with one another, then that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the sort of environment that really a lot of people strive to be involved in, because who doesn't want to like it's always good to make friends with the people you work with, and it's even better to get along with the people you work with. I've been told for many years to get along with my neighbors, and I get along with the people at where I work at pretty much as it's like slipping a glove on, you know what I mean? It's that simple, and it makes that much sense. Oh yes. But just to cut it back to what I was mentioning before, there are some people out there who literally could have just stopped working years ago. I mean, at least my dad, he had the opportunity that he managed to retire a little bit earlier than he had intended, but it was because he could afford to do it, and also because in many ways, he was kind of, the stress was getting to him a little bit about the level of responsibility that his job had to undergo. And this was post U-Tree as well. So this was like going into the end of 2016, is that when he really started to consider the idea for retirement. And it got to, and my dad retired for good at Christmas of 2017. The presents he received, the wine he received, all the letters from parents that he received, all the gifts from all the people throughout the years, through his near 40-year service to education. His work is absolutely commendable, and it shows. And that's the sort of thing that, you know, I've always looked up to my dad in that many ways, not just because he was good at the job that he did, not because his job had tremendous levels of responsibility to it, but also for the fact that he enjoyed doing it. He enjoyed going to work. He enjoyed, you know, managing things. He enjoyed, because of course he enjoyed not just like being the boss, but he also had bosses that he had to, you know, conduct meetings with. He had to, you know, be a very diplomatic person, because he was in many ways representing the place he worked at. And that's, again, the thing people need to sort of like understand, is that when my dad was first starting teaching, is that he already had a certain, when he started like teaching like in full time 40 years ago, is that he was already in a position that was already quite high. And there incurred a certain level of, like, you know, kind of like a hierarchy. And that's also the other part that people are sort of like very split on when it comes to the working environment, is that there is a certain level of, you know, like a hierarchy. There's those on the ground, and then there's like management, and then there's, of course, there's associates and the like line managers, and just those who are just starting out. So there's a lot of things to be said about when you start working for people, that there are people who've had way more experience, and those who have been rewarded for their experience and who are slightly higher in the food chain. Then, of course, then again, there are certain people who've literally been working there for years and seem to be exactly in the same position. And sometimes I think that drives people nuts. You know, it's like being stuck at a dead-end job. And that's basically the tumult existence of a dead-end job. I mean, when I go to work, I see people all the day who, honestly, I think are working a dead-end job. They've been in the same position absolutely for years. They have tried, honestly, from what I've heard, that they try to get higher into a managerial position, but they get turned down time and time again. And that's, again, another great thing I kind of like wanted to emphasize on again about work culture, and something that quite a lot of people don't really seem to understand, is that you learn things, ladies and gentlemen, just by using your eyes. And if you saw like some of the environments, it's like, take offices, for example. We all know really what they're like. Can I borrow a stapler, please? Or is it possible we could see such and such at this time, and can we do it over the phone? I remember just on Friday, there was a customer who was coming into our place of work. He was in a wheelchair, and I think he was suffering from, it might have been Parkinson's or scoliosis or something like that. He was, the poor lad, like it looked like it should have been an over the phone appointment. And I was saying this to one of my colleagues, that why on earth, like, that poor man, like, I know I bang on about, you know, like phone appointments and that they should be reserved for the most extreme cases, unless of course there is absolutely nothing for it. But this guy, remember, came on his own into our place of work, and just to have a meeting with somebody. And all I could think to myself is that watching it, I was just kind of like, that just doesn't seem fair, because there are plenty of people who abuse like our core systems and stuff like that. And that poor man who's just come in, you know, he might have had a job, you know, he might have, he before what happened, like, you know, whether or not his condition deteriorated. I mean, I say Parkinson's, I don't know for certain, and I don't really think it's like an appropriate thing to guess, but by the looks of things, it looked like it might have been that, or something a bit more severe. But again, the point I wanted to emphasize is this: is that it doesn't seem fair. That man could have had a job. I mean, take for example, about a year and a half ago, I watched a movie called I, Daniel Blake. It was a movie set in my hometown of Newcastle, and it was about this carpenter, and he used his hands. He was fantastic at using his hands. His wife tragically passes away, and he suffers a heart attack, and now he's rendered unfit to go to work, so he has to sign on. But he's perfectly fine to. He has to somehow be in a position where he has to sign on, but he can't actually get work because of his health condition. So it's like he's caught in the system that literally he's like being caught in a rock and a hard place. And you watch Daniel go throughout the movie, and he's just trying to like get along with his neighbors, try to hire work, and then he gets turned down from places because of the predicament he's in. It doesn't seem as if like there's anything that could go right. I mean, he has to start using computers, and again, I really had to emphasize this. You're trying to, like, a guy who's been using, like, works with, like, wood and carpentry all of his life, and then you immediately expect him, like that, to know how to work computers. There's one part where he's actually in the Central Library, which I know I've been going there for many, many years, and he's just sat there and he doesn't know how to use the mouse, or he doesn't know how to, anything like that. And he's really nice to the people who help him out, but it's like, the people are like, because I know there used to be a job center in the city center, but I think it's like now something for the NHS now. He just goes there, and it's like he's not getting, and this guy is like, something should be done for people like him. You know what I mean? He's more than capable of getting work, but you know what? Unfortunately, the job he's probably after probably just doesn't, not that it doesn't exist, but it's just, you know what I mean? Excuse me, 1 second. I keep forgetting that I have to do this as well. It's the stupid bloody mirror. It's what causes the distraction in the background. You know what? I told the people, at Stevenage Council or whoever it is I have to go to about that. So sorry about that little unforeseen breakage, as it were, if there even is such a word as that. So anyway, back to what I was talking about. He goes through the notions. He aids out this family from London who suddenly have to move up north. They struggle throughout the winter months, and the poor wife of the single mother has to resort to food banks. She is like starving herself just so her kids could eat. She turns to prostitution because it's like she has no other way out. And the movie just ends with Daniel having another heart attack after he looks like he might actually get somewhere from like JSA or Universal Credit. And the movie just ends with Katie and the few people that knew him at his funeral. And they just explain that he was just a man, just somebody he was a soul whose intentions were good, and he didn't want to be misunderstood. And he did what he could for other people, and they just let him pass through the system, and that's it. It's a very bleak ending, but then again, I think a lot of God damn it! I know who fine well who the director is as well. It's the guy who did Sweet 16. Let me just let me get it up for you 1 second. God damn it! You know what? I'll know immediately who it is when Daniel Blake. Ken Loach, that's it. Box office $15.8 million. And that literally must have been, I don't even know, that must have been like a 1 million budget movie. Because then again, I know all of the I know literally every street that movie was made on. I know all the places, and it's not very often I could say I know every single place where that movie's shot in, but yeah. I've even been to the very spot, the iconic spot in the movie where Daniel is just sitting outside the job site and he sprays, "I, Daniel Blake, want some help from JSA and something to just stop these shitty, ringtones." And the people gather around him and cheer him, and then the police come, and I've sat in that very spot. I shot a video of being in that position, and it must be the only time in my life I can honestly say I was actually at a famous movie location, and I felt like I, Daniel Blake, for 1 second, instead of just being Jimmy Frank. You know what I mean? Or Dave Bautista, or Raging Reality, you know what I mean? Oh dear. A man can only dream. But speaking of dreaming, it's all very well and good to glamorize I, Daniel Blake's struggle, because he hasn't really done anything really wrong. I mean, the heart attack came out of nowhere, and it's of no fault of his own. But then, of course, there are also people out there who, I don't really want to say they bring it on themselves, but they do, I honestly, you know what? There was this guy who used to be at my place of work. He was, the very first day I worked there, he said in a very loud voice to a lot of people, "Respect the fact that I'm unemployed." That was the very first time he ever said that, and I kept thinking to myself, well, respect what exactly? What is there? And bear in mind, this was just my first day on the job. What exactly is it about, being unemployed demands people to respect you? You know what I mean? When I was unemployed, I didn't demand people respected me. I worked. I hid myself away. I worked. I looked for work, and I worked on making videos. I did something productive with my time. It may not have made too much money. In fact, it didn't make any money. But you know what? I was more than happy to do it, because you know what? At least I could start getting good at what I was doing. And I learned a lot of lessons throughout all those times I was unemployed. And I made a promise to myself never to be in that position ever again. Because it is because when you're in work, ladies and gentlemen, this is something I've just learned rather naturally, is that it's not just when you're in work, it sometimes may not be for the job you want, but it can make you go a long way towards actually getting the job you really want in the end. And what I mean by that is, if you have dreams, ladies and gentlemen, if you have something to aspire to, don't just let a few bad years or a few bad experiences, don't let stuff like that ever deter you from really trying. And that's something, you know what? That was something that being unemployed really did teach me, is that it does not deter people from trying. And I was a little bit unlucky during the time when I was unemployed, that this was during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, and I was just a little bit unlucky that there were so many things that had to be heavily scrutinized, and because workforces and that were being destroyed because of high destructions to the British high streets and all the rest of them. But in spite of all of this, I somehow weathered the storm, and I've never had COVID at all during the pandemic, and my job has literally revolved me around me keeping people safe from COVID. Not once, ladies and gentlemen, on my watch has anybody ever died from COVID. And honestly, for what that's worth, I think that is a lot more commendable than I think anybody would give any credit for, because COVID is very much still a thing. And do you think whether or not you're a conspirator or you don't really believe in COVID, period, the fact is that how many more people does it take until we realize too many people have died? You know, that sort of thing. So what I was saying before about, you know, having dreams is that just having them isn't really enough. You've got to actually work on them. You've got to build on what you have and what you want to get out of this life. So I financed a lot of my ambitions using the pay I get from work and to making the stuff that I do. Like the camera I use, the stand I use, the lights I use, the green screen I use, the table I use, the chair I use, everything I paid out of my own pocket. I have never once used anything, even when I was on Universal Credit, I never used any of that to get any of this equipment. I just made do with what I had, and it worked itself up from there. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, there's the fact that every single time they asked me if I wanted more hours of work, I took them. I decided them in all of 3 seconds. Like when it started, I was only working 40 hours a week. When the 1st of September rolled around, well, 1 week before September began, they asked us if I wanted to work 50 hours a week. So my working day would begin at 9 o'clock and it would end at 7 at night. And I said yes to that. And then a little bit later, when December was just beginning, they asked us if I wanted to do 9 till 5 on Saturdays as well. And I said yes. And on top of that, I was also doing my daily paper route, which meant that it takes me about an hour. It took me about an hour to do 2 paper routes throughout my village. So all in all things considered, and I was doing 2 paper routes every single day, Monday to Sunday, and all that. So taking all of that into account, and as a whole, my working week was basically, as near as makes no difference, 65 hours a week, in which I was actually getting paid for working. Everything else was making videos or doing something in my spare time that revolved around making content. In short, using what I was getting paid for to make sure my stuff comes to fruition. Whether that was like paying for software like Adobe and all the rest of it, like Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, Audition, character animation, rigging, stuff like that. Or whether it was going towards, you know, things like apps to improve my photography, because I was really, really good at photography when I was 17 to 18, and it was just something that I just kind of like stopped doing really once I finished secondary school. Well, sixth form, I should say. But I think there's still hope for me yet to get back into it. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, but then again, there is also the slightly bad side, and I spoke a lot about like the benefits of, like, you know what, being paid well, and you know what, you get paid for the work you do, and even though my position in the place I am is quite low, it's still a matter of fact that, you know what, I still get treated very well by the people that work there. I'm still very friendly with the people I work there. Everybody has like their differences every now and then. People don't like the way certain things are done, all the rest of it, yada yada yada. The stories I've heard, trust me. But it's still the matter of fact that I still get along with people, and because that's what I want to do. It's not that I don't want to play kiss ass with people. It's just that's just how it is. You know what I mean? I don't just do the things I do just because that's what people expect. That's just because that's who I am, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Some people, again, might disagree with that, but you know what? I feel happy that, you know what? I feel like there could be people who actually like seeing me going to work. Even the people out there who might enjoy my presence. I don't know. It's got to be something. Because, well, why even bother going to a job? It's one thing to go to a job where you get paid, but it's another thing when, you know what, you're not appreciated or you're not welcome. I've worked in places, ladies and gentlemen, where I've never felt welcome. and anyone else would have just turned it away immediately on that principle alone. But I still went there anyway, not out of spite, not to spite them, but because, you know what, I have, a moral obligation to go to work and to earn for a living and all the rest of it. That's just, for me, that's how it is. Some people may think that I probably should deserve a little bit more respect than that. I mean, if they treat everybody like they treat me in other jobs, for example, then they just wouldn't have a workforce at all. But you know what, there's a certain level of respect that has to come into place, you know what, from both the management and from the own employers and all the rest of it. It's just how it is. I'm not saying, I'm going to be best friends with the people I work with. Like, I'm not expecting to, get engaged anytime soon. But it's still a matter of fact that, you know what, for what it's worth, I just got to see it through. But as I said before, there is a weak point in just my working life, and it is this: that in spite of working 65 hours a week, in spite of me spending every other time either asleep or making content, not really socializing, despite all of that, there is one major weak link, and it is this: that despite all the work I'm doing, out of work and in it, I don't really seem to be in a terribly different position than from when I first started. And that sounds like a really strange thing to say, but it does cover a very genuine grievance. And that is the stuff I'm working at actually going to get me any further in life? Am I going to be better off at the end of the day, or am I going to be any happier at the end of the day? And I mention these things because it's not that I don't think that there is any hope for people like me at the end of the day when it comes to just doing what they want because it makes them happy, or doing what they do because economically it's the only viable way to make any of this possible. But when all is said and done, am I any more valuable because I've saw through this? Am I any more valuable to the place I work in because I still work there? I mean, a few days ago, the post office said that they were going to stop doing paper deliveries. And you know how long I've been doing that paper rounds, ladies and gentlemen? I've been doing it since September of 2011. I've been doing it for 11 years. And they decided that literally they would send us all a letter at the post office. I mean, they didn't have our addresses or anything like that. It explained in 4 lines that they were going to cease doing paper routes, and our final rounds would come at October 29th. And they said, thank you so much for your service. Goodbye. And it's basically, I got no compensation. They literally, and there was no gift or no farewell gift or anything like that. Just cut all ties, wipe hands. They're completely free of the situation. And honestly, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just say this. That's no way to treat your workforce, and you know what I mean? All those years and all that, for what exactly? For that level of ingratitude. And I'm talking about myself here specifically because 11 years is a long time, ladies and gentlemen. It's a long time to stay anywhere. And they just make you feel like you're just being thrown aside as though it didn't even matter. And again, now the money might not have been tremendously great, I'll be honest, but it was the fact that I got early morning fresh air and a bit of exercise, and sometimes that was worth it more than the money ever could. And it's more than just take away people's money or work. It's take away a bit of their livelihood. It was just taking away a part of their routine, and like I mentioned again, a lot of people close to us said that it's probably the best probably, in the long run, it's probably good, and I shouldn't be too, like, brought down over it. They said it without actually hearing anything I had to say out about what this means to my dignity and my level of respect among the community and stuff like that. But what about the fact that I actually enjoyed doing what I was doing? You know what I mean? Imagine what if one day somebody came along saying that you're not allowed to make YouTube videos anymore because, you know what, because for any undisclosed reason. Not because I was banned or because I was bad at doing it, but because I was just, we're going to have to stop people from doing it. If that happened tomorrow, I probably would just move on, but it's the principle of the whole thing that I don't understand. That somebody could just come along and suddenly say, that's it, you're not allowed to do it anymore. No exceptions. No excuses. You know what I mean? And it's the worst feeling in the world, because it makes you feel completely helpless to stop it. And I wish I could honestly describe to you how that's probably what upsets me more than anything. It's the principle of the fact that you're so low on the ladder that they can literally cut you off, and they literally would not feel sorry about it. They won't even talk to you in person about it. They won't even, send you anything to say thank you for all the years you've been doing this. That is as much empathy that these people sort of have for the people that work for them. And that's, if I ever work for a place like that ever again, where they literally could just do that without warning, and yeah, you know what, that's just, I wouldn't even wait for my final day. I'd probably just walk straight out. It's a dreadful thing, but like I said again, why would anyone want to just ignoring financial stuff and money and all the rest of it? Would you ever really work in a place where you did not feel welcome, or you didn't feel as if like they wanted you to be there? You know what I mean? Intimidation, prejudice, all the rest of it. It exists as much in the workplace as it exists anywhere else. And yet, despite all of these negatives, you never, like I said, I never give up hope, and it doesn't stop me from trying. You never lose, even for an instance, the sense of honor and duty and role you've played during your time at wherever you work. And again, for those who probably aspire better, greater things in their life, again, don't give up. Don't stop believing just because, things right now haven't turned out for the best. Sometimes it teaches you a lot more through, trials and adversities and stuff like that than having people kiss your ass all the time. I think it's a lot more important stuff like that happens in the long run. Maybe not. It may not seem like that right now, but there's an awful lot of people out there, ladies and gentlemen, that even as bad as perhaps some people might be going through, and not to mention the cost of living crisis is going to drive people over the edge, there are still people who are desperate with hunger and reckless with misery all over the world, not just happening to you. I know it might not be the thing you want to hear, but I think it says a lot more that we just not only that we accept that this is the case, but the fact is that if you think it's bad here, imagine if it's bad elsewhere, and it probably might be even past imagining elsewhere. So that's maybe a slightly more encouraging thought. If I go hungry, ladies and gentlemen, at the very least, I could probably afford to lose a couple of pounds before it really sets in that I have to do something immediate. If I work hard, ladies and gentlemen, at the very least, I could say I'm working for myself. I don't call anybody else master. I don't have to hand over egregious amounts of tax to people just because they decide they want to have it. I don't have to believe in what people tell me as fact unless I really wanted to believe it. I can believe what I am free to believe in. I can say whatever I truly feel to say. As far in my eyes, all people should and are equal. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, ladies and gentlemen. We will all want to be happy. But we have to accept also, ladies and gentlemen, that in life, whether you are in work or out of it, life requires a certain level of effort. I'll take that home with you, and I will look forward to all of you guys again next Sunday for another brew with me and you. Take care and good night from Stevenage.